In the chilling world of true crime, some stories stand out for their sheer brutality and the unimaginable depths of human cruelty. In this YouTube video, we delve into the disturbing tales of three women who not only betrayed the sacred bonds of motherhood, but also committed heinous acts that shook the nation. Theresa Knorr, Susan Smith, and Jennifer and Sarah Hart are names that have become synonymous with maternal horror. Their stories are a stark reminder that even those entrusted with the care and protection of their own children can sometimes descend into the darkest realms of evil. Join us as we explore the shocking and haunting cases of these horrible mothers and try to understand what drove them to commit unspeakable acts of violence. Viewer discretion is advised, as the details of these cases are not for the faint of heart. Jennifer and Sarah Hart, a tragic tale of child abuse and a shocking crime. Jennifer and Sarah Hart were a married couple whose names became synonymous with a shocking and deeply tragic case of child abuse and murder-suicide that horrified the nation. Their story, which unfolded in 2018, involves the intentional deaths of their 6 adopted children and their own lives. Born on April 7, 1979, Jennifer Jean Hart, and on November 12, 1978, Sarah Margaret Hart, their lives would ultimately culminate in a devastating act that left a community in shock. In this comprehensive exploration, we will delve into the lives of Jennifer and Sarah Hart, the events leading up to the tragedy, the crime itself, the investigation, and the aftermath. Jennifer and Sarah Hart's backgrounds were marked by challenges and complexities that would later play a role in their tragic story. Jennifer grew up in Huron, South Dakota, and had a troubled childhood. She reportedly faced difficulties within her family and struggled with mental health issues from a young age. Sarah, on the other hand, hailed from Big Stone City, South Dakota, and had a more stable upbringing. Jennifer and Sarah met in college, where they both attended Northern State University in Aberdeen, South Dakota. They developed a close relationship, and their shared experiences as women from rural areas of South Dakota created a strong bond. The couple's relationship would ultimately lead to a life together and the adoption of several children. Jennifer and Sarah Hart entered into a committed relationship, and in 2004 they traveled to Canada to get married. Their marriage was not legally recognized in the United States at the time due to the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, which was later overturned in 2013. The couple shared a passion for social justice and activism, often advocating for causes related to racial equality and LGBTQ+ rights. Their advocacy work took them to various places, including Minnesota and Oregon, where they ultimately settled in the small town of West Lynn. Jennifer and Sarah were dedicated to the idea of creating a diverse and loving family. Over the years, they adopted 6 children who were primarily African American. Their children were Devontae, Jeremiah, Sierra, Abigail, Hannah, and Marcus. The couple's social media presence showcased their seemingly idyllic family life and their commitment to raising their children in an inclusive and progressive environment. Despite the outward appearance of a loving and inclusive family, behind closed doors, Jennifer and Sarah Hart's home was anything but. In March 2018, their lives took a horrific turn when they loaded their 6 children into their SUV and drove it off a cliff along the Pacific Coast Highway near Mendocino, California. The crash resulted in the deaths of Jennifer, Sarah, and their 6 adopted children. The investigation that followed revealed a disturbing pattern of child abuse, neglect, and isolation within the Hart household. The children were reportedly subjected to physical abuse, emotional abuse, and extreme isolation. They were withdrawn from school, and their contact with the outside world was severely restricted. The tragic crash was viewed as a final, desperate act by Jennifer and Sarah Hart, as they faced potential exposure and consequences for their abusive behavior. The crash initially appeared to be a tragic accident, but as investigators delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding the incident, a more troubling narrative emerged. The findings suggested that Jennifer and Sarah Hart had deliberately driven off the cliff, taking the lives of their children and themselves. Motives for the crime were complex and multifaceted. Investigators uncovered evidence of long-term child abuse and neglect, including reports of the children being malnourished and physically abused. The couple's lifestyle, which included constantly moving to avoid scrutiny and isolating their children from the outside world, raised serious concerns about their intentions. One potential motive that emerged was the fear of losing custody of their adopted children. Reports had been made to Child Protective Services in both Oregon and Minnesota regarding the Hart family's treatment of their children. In particular, a photograph of Devonte Hart hugging a police officer during a protest had gone viral and prompted investigations into the family's well-being. The investigation also uncovered evidence that Jennifer and Sarah had researched suicide methods and discussed the possibility of ending their lives and those of their children. Their desperate act may have been an attempt to evade the legal consequences of their abusive behavior and the loss of their family. The tragic deaths of Jennifer and Sarah Hart and their 6 adopted children sent shockwaves through the nation and highlighted the failures of the child welfare system in detecting and preventing abuse. In the aftermath of the tragedy, efforts were made to improve child protective services and the monitoring of adoptive families. Questions were raised about the oversight of adopted children in homeschooling situations, as the Harts had withdrawn their children from school and isolated them from the community. The case also underscored the complexities of abusive dynamics within families and the ability of abusers to maintain a facade of normalcy to outsiders. The Harts' outward image of a loving, progressive family masked the abuse and neglect that their children endured. The lives of Jennifer and Sarah Hart were marked by advocacy for social justice and the adoption of 6 children from diverse backgrounds. However, their outward image concealed a deeply troubled family life characterized by abuse, isolation, and ultimately a horrific act of murder-suicide that claimed their own lives and those of their children. The Hart case serves as a tragic reminder of the complexities of abusive relationships and the importance of vigilant reporting and intervention in cases of suspected child abuse. The lives lost in this devastating event continue to be remembered, and their story serves as a somber reflection on the consequences of unchecked abuse and isolation within a family. Susan Smith, A Tragic Tale of Deception and Infanticide. Susan Smith is a name that became synonymous with a horrifying and heart-wrenching crime that shocked the nation. Born on September 26, 1971, in Union, South Carolina, Susan Smith's life took a dark turn when she committed an unthinkable act of infanticide in 1994. Her case is a tragic reminder of the complexities of human psychology, the consequences of deceit, and the devastating impact of her actions on her community and the world. In this comprehensive exploration, we will delve into Susan Smith's life, the events leading up to the crime itself, the investigation, the trial, and the aftermath. Susan Lee Smith grew up in a modest working-class family in Union, South Carolina. Her parents, Linda and Harry Vaughn, divorced when she was young, and Susan was primarily raised by her mother. Her childhood was unremarkable by most accounts, although there were signs of emotional instability and a troubled relationship with her stepfather, Beverly Russell. Smith's family life was further marked by tragedy when her father, Harry Vaughn, died by suicide when she was just 6 years old. This traumatic event had a profound impact on her emotional well-being and would resurface in her adult life. As Susan Smith entered her teenage years, she displayed signs of emotional distress, including struggles with depression and a history of self-harm. Despite these challenges, she graduated from high school and began working as a secretary at a local textile mill. In 1991, at the age of 19, Susan Smith married David Smith. Their marriage was characterized by turbulence and infidelity on both sides. The couple experienced difficulties in their relationship, which included financial struggles and arguments. Susan Smith became a mother when she gave birth to their first child, Michael Daniel Smith, in October 1991. The birth of Michael brought joy to the couple, but also added stress to their already strained marriage. Susan would later become pregnant again, and it was the circumstances surrounding her second pregnancy that would ultimately lead to the shocking crime that would define her life. On the evening of October 25, 1994, Susan Smith committed an act of unspeakable horror. She strapped her 2 young sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander, into their car seats in her Mazda sedan and drove to John D. Long Lake, located in Union, South Carolina. What followed was a chilling act of infanticide. Susan Smith released the handbrake of her car, allowing it to roll into the lake with her children still inside. Afterward, Susan Smith concocted a fictitious story that would send shockwaves throughout the nation. She claimed that a carjacker had abducted her sons when she stopped at a red light, providing a detailed description of the alleged assailant. Her story led to a massive manhunt and a nationwide search for the missing children, capturing the attention and sympathy of the public. Susan Smith's deception was initially convincing, and law enforcement and the community rallied to find her missing sons. The search efforts, however, would reveal inconsistencies in her account. Suspicion grew as investigators questioned the plausibility of a carjacking occurring at the exact location she claimed. 9 days after the alleged abduction, Susan Smith confessed to her shocking crime. She tearfully admitted to the police that she had fabricated the story and that her sons were in the submerged car at the bottom of the lake. Dive teams were immediately dispatched to recover the bodies of Michael and Alexander. The confession sent shockwaves through the community as friends, family, and the nation grappled with the incomprehensible tragedy. Susan Smith's actions left a scar on the hearts of all who had been involved in the search and those who had empathized with her during her deceitful charade. The question that plagued many in the aftermath of the crime was, why? What could drive a mother to commit such a heinous act against her own children? Psychological experts delved into Susan Smith's background and psyche, attempting to understand the motives behind her actions. It was revealed that Susan had carried on an affair with a wealthy and older man, Tom Findlay, who had expressed reluctance about becoming involved with someone with children. Susan Smith's desire to maintain her relationship with Findlay and the belief that her children were an impediment to that relationship played a pivotal role in her decision to murder her sons. Her troubled childhood, the loss of her father to suicide, and her ongoing struggles with depression and self-esteem issues also contributed to her emotional instability. Susan Smith's actions can be seen as a desperate attempt to escape her troubled life and pursue a romantic relationship that she believed would offer a better future. Susan Smith's trial was a media sensation, drawing widespread attention and scrutiny. The prosecution presented a compelling case against her, highlighting her elaborate deception and the premeditated nature of the crime. The defense argued that Susan's mental health issues played a significant role in her actions, presenting expert testimony to support their claims. In July 1995, Susan Smith was found guilty of 2 counts of murder for the deaths of Michael and Alexander Smith. The jury recommended a life sentence for each count to be served consecutively, meaning she would spend the rest of her life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge accepted the jury's recommendation, and Susan Smith was formally sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in prison. The Susan Smith case left an indelible mark on the nation's collective consciousness. It served as a stark reminder of the depths of human depravity and the capacity for a mother to harm her own children. The crime also sparked discussions about mental health, infanticide, and the consequences of sensationalized media coverage. Susan Smith's actions continue to be a subject of fascination, revulsion, and debate. Her case has been explored in books, documentaries, and news coverage, serving as a cautionary tale about the consequences of deceit, infidelity, and the tragic consequences that can follow. Susan Smith's life is a haunting example of a mother who committed an unthinkable crime, forever altering the lives of her 2 young sons and the community that rallied to find them. Her case stands as a somber reminder of the complexity of human psychology, the consequences of unchecked deceit, and the tragic consequences of her actions. While Susan Smith will spend the rest of her life in prison, the memory of her crime continues to evoke strong emotions and serves as a chilling chapter in the annals of criminal history. Theresa Knorr, a dark tale of maternal abuse and murder. Theresa Knorr is a name that is often associated with one of the most horrifying cases of maternal abuse and murder in American criminal history. Born in 1946, Theresa Knorr's life became a chilling saga of cruelty, manipulation, and ultimately the brutal murders of 2 of her own daughters. Her story is a stark reminder of the depths of human depravity and the consequences of unchecked abuse within a family. In this comprehensive exploration, we will delve into the life and crimes of Theresa Knorr, examining the circumstances that led to her notorious actions and the legal proceedings that followed. Theresa Jimmy Cross was born on March 14, 1946, in Sacramento, California. Her upbringing was marred by a tumultuous family life characterized by instability and violence. She was the third of 6 children, and her parents' tumultuous relationship set the stage for a chaotic childhood. Her father, Chester Cross, was abusive, and her mother, Opal, struggled to maintain a sense of stability in the household. Theresa's early years were marked by instability, poverty, and the constant threat of violence. The Cross family moved frequently, and Theresa's exposure to her father's abusive behavior left a lasting impact on her psyche. The unstable environment in which she grew up would later contribute to her own destructive behavior as an adult. In 1964, at the age of 18, Theresa Cross married Clifford Clyde Sanders. Their marriage was fraught with tension and violence, mirroring the tumultuous environment of Theresa's own upbringing. The couple had 4 children together: Howard, Robert, Suzanne, and Sheila. Theresa's husband, Clifford, was no stranger to violence, and their relationship was marked by frequent physical altercations. As Theresa's family grew, so did her capacity for cruelty. She subjected her children to emotional and physical abuse, often using severe corporal punishment as a means of control. The abuse was not limited to physical violence. Theresa also manipulated her children emotionally, instilling fear and dependency. As the years passed, Theresa's abuse of her children escalated. Her daughters, Suzanne and Sheila, bore the brunt of her brutality. She isolated them from the outside world, homeschooling them and prohibiting them from forming friendships or maintaining any semblance of a normal life. The girls were effectively imprisoned within their own home, cut off from the support and intervention that might have saved them. The abuse inflicted by Theresa on her daughters was both physical and psychological. They were denied food, forced to endure excruciating punishments, and subjected to degrading treatment. The extent of the abuse was nothing short of torture, and it left deep emotional scars on both Suzanne and Sheila. Tragically, the abuse would ultimately culminate in the unthinkable. In 1984, the already dire situation took a horrifying turn. Theresa Knorr, then 16 years old, became critically ill due to an untreated infection. Instead of seeking medical attention, Theresa chose to let her daughter suffer, ultimately leading to Suesan's death. The exact circumstances of Suesan's demise remain shrouded in darkness, but it is believed that Theresa played a direct role in her daughter's death. Susan's death was not the end of the nightmare. In 1985, Theresa turned her murderous intent toward her youngest daughter, Sheila. Just like her older sister, Sheila was subjected to severe abuse and isolation. Her life came to a tragic end when Theresa, in a fit of rage, shot her in the chest. Sheila's lifeless body was left in a remote location in the Sierra Nevada mountains, where it would remain hidden for several years. The story of Theresa Knorr's heinous crimes might have remained concealed if not for the courage of one of her surviving children, Terry Knorr. In 1993, Terry, who had managed to escape his mother's clutches, went to the authorities and provided crucial information about the murders of Suzanne and Sheila. Terry's testimony, along with the evidence uncovered by law enforcement, painted a harrowing picture of abuse, manipulation, and murder. Theresa Knorr was subsequently arrested and charged with the murders of Suzanne and Sheila, as well as the abuse inflicted on her surviving children. Theresa Knorr's trial was a highly publicized affair that captivated the nation's attention. The prosecution presented a compelling case built on Terry Knorr's testimony, physical evidence, and the testimony of Theresa's surviving children, who recounted the years of abuse they had endured. In 1995, Theresa Knorr was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Suzanne and Sheila. She was also convicted of various charges related to child abuse and endangerment. The judge sentenced her to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she would spend the rest of her life behind bars. Theresa Knorr's case stands as a stark reminder of the capacity for cruelty that can exist within families. Her story has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and true crime discussions, serving as a cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of unchecked abuse and manipulation. The legal proceedings that led to Theresa's conviction also shed light on the importance of breaking the cycle of abuse and providing support and resources to victims. It was Terry Knorr's bravery in coming forward that ultimately led to justice being served for his sisters and exposed the dark truth about his mother's actions. Theresa Knorr's life is a chilling chapter in the annals of American crime, marked by a legacy of abuse, manipulation, and the murder of her own daughters. Her story serves as a haunting reminder of the horrors that can occur within the walls of a family home, and the importance of vigilance and intervention in cases of abuse. While Theresa Knorr will spend the rest of her life behind bars, the scars of her actions continue to haunt those who survived her reign of terror, and her case remains a dark and cautionary tale in the realm of true crime. Thanks for watching. To support us, please like and subscribe.